Welcome in, everybody, to this episode of Discard for Magic, a Summoner Wars podcast. As always, I'm your host, Aaron.
And I'm your other host, James, or Jexic, and today we're excited to bring on Vexer, two-time league champ and Swamp Orcs expert.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
So, Vexer, why don't you just start out a little bit and just tell us how you started playing Summoner Wars?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my story is similar to like a lot of the players that didn't play first edition, in which around the time that the master set came out, there were a lot of reviews out there, right? Like many sites doing reviews. So I saw it in one of them. I was looking for two players games. Usually it's hard to, I mean, I love board games in general, but it's hard to assemble like larger groups to play most of them. So I was looking for some two-player games, and when I saw that one, it seemed amazing. I'm a long time like Magic the Gathering player, so that's kind of like the first thing that I noticed. Like, oh, it seems like a little bit similar concept, like creatures, sorceries, like instants, like magic and all that stuff. So I checked it out, and yeah, after like playing just a couple of games with my wife, I was hooked on it. Like, I had noticed like, oh yeah, I mean, it's easy to learn. Like you can learn it pretty quickly, but it has a lot of depth, right? Like a lot of strategy needs to be considered to for all the positioning and all those things. So I started looking out for more information to check like other factions. So let's see what other factions are around, and I eventually found the online app to play. And from there, I've been just almost constantly playing since that point.
I was wondering, when was it that you started?
It was just over a year ago. I think it was in the summer of 2022. Around that point, I think in August is when I started playing.
I'm trying to think of what factions were releasing around then.
Was that like cloaks and stuff, or was that...
Yeah, it was around the time in which cloaks were just released. Like they were around the Eternal Council, I remember. Fungal Dwarves, I think, were some of the new ones. The first 2, 3 months, I think I was only playing Phoenix Elves and Tundra Orcs, which were the free ones. And I mean, I was just really learning and just getting roughed out by everyone on the app. As you know, when you start, like you're just kind of like getting the hang of it, and then just trying to master some of the factions. So I don't know, like one of the ones that I enjoy the most is Phoenix Elves, and it's not sure if it's because it's the one that I just play extensively at first. And then I was like, you know what, this is amazing. I'm just gonna subscribe and just start playing with every single faction.
Have you been playing a lot of Phoenix Elves with the recent changes?
Yeah, like I love those changes because before they were clearly a faction, like it couldn't compete with most of the other factions. But now with that change, it makes them viable, right? Like it's not like it's on the top faction, anything like that. Like it's still weaker than the other ones. Now you can compete, right? Like at least now you have a fighting chance, and there's ways to play them in which like you stand a chance. But it was a great change. Hopefully, like they'll just make it permanent.
For anybody who doesn't know, Maldaria, their summoner, got changed. She used to have an ability where she attacked and would gain a boost, and then could use that boost to pull a common unit back to her, but she had to attack an enemy unit. And they changed it to if she attacks any enemy card, so it could be structures also. She can place a friendly unit, including champions, not just commons, adjacent to her. And on top of that, adjacent friendly units cannot be attacked through or forced. So a decent change for her.
Yeah, definitely changed the way the Tundra Orc matchup plays.
That's for sure. Brutal Force doesn't work near as well.
So you said you got into Summoner Wars when you're looking for two-player games. Are there any other games that you like to play outside of Summoner Wars?
You know, the one that I been playing the most probably was the Seven Wonders Duel, like from the two-player games perspective. With all the expansions, like the complexity of it increases and it makes it much more entertaining. Like there's many other now ways in which you can play it. Other than that, in the past few years, one that I found that I really loved it was Alchemist. it's also one of those in which there's a decent level of complexity, but it's something not extreme like some of the other board games out there in which it takes you like multiple playthroughs to really get the hang of it. Which other one? There's not sure if you guys have ever heard of the Risk 2210 AD.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a futuristic Risk. That was used to be one of the ones that I enjoy the most, as they solved the issue in which the game could go on forever. Like that doesn't happen on
You
this
just
one.
had 5 rounds. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 rounds, and then like whoever is in the best spot after those 5 rounds. So you're playing your strategy that you're building is around those 5 turns. So it fixes, and it has all the added like the commander type of units and all the kind of like events type of thing, right? Like the magic type of events that you can play, and all those crazy things of the moon territories and the water territories.
And like the nuke commander.
Exactly. So yeah, I used to really like that one. I haven't really played in a while, but yeah, that's the thing with board games. Like it's hard to play in real life many times. So I found there's a site in which you can play some of them online. I think it's Board Game Arena or something like that. But you just find mostly basic games, like simpler games, I believe. I'm sure if you guys have played on that site.
Yeah, Board Game Arena is pretty cool.
Yeah, I played a bit of Race for the Galaxy on there, which is like a card game adaptation of Puerto Rico. But the big thing that Race for the Galaxy has in common with Summoner Wars is discarding cards for money in that game essentially. And so like I played that before Summoner Wars, and it made me think a little bit of Summoner Wars when I played it, or like Race for the Galaxy. I looked back at Race for the Galaxy and thought I really like this mechanic of discarding cards for other benefits.
Really makes you make some tough decisions. Have you been playing a lot of Summoner Wars in person, Vexer?
Oh, not really. It was just that one time, and then recently I played with a friend, just trying to show him the games. He's also a Magic player. Those were the only times. And the funny thing is that this last time that I played, after like the over 1,000 of games in the online in the past year, it felt so weird, like with the physical board and the space between the cards and everything. Uh, yeah, that was I didn't expect that. Like it just felt super weird playing with a physical board and the physical cards.
Yeah, I struggled sometimes to get a lot of in-person games played too. I played a couple the other day, but it's just tough to find people who want to play board games in person.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And with Summoner Wars, I see like the other type of player that I see a lot in Discord was the old timer who was there since first edition. The thing that sounds really weird to me that is one of the main reasons why, I mean, I've never really been curious to even try it, is that thing in which people say that you were killing your own units, your common units most of the time just to ramp up the magic, and then it was mostly like a champion battle. Is that kind of like how you guys feel it is?
Uh, it's mostly true, except for a couple factions like the Cave Goblins and the Mountain Vargath. And it changed over time. I think by the time they rolled out the second summoners, they were more conscious of that and tried to make commons more viable. But for the most part, it was like every deck was discarding hard, like harder than the Vanguards do. It was like, oh, don't want that common, don't want that common.
And I think the melee and range dice, like you had the same mods, right, between those, or
Yeah, everything was 2/3 odds unless there was an ability that changed it.
yeah, which I mean, there's then a clear advantage of range units. Like, why would you even care about the other ones? Sounds to me like there were some like clear balance issues that they addressed on the second edition. So yeah, I mean, seeing second edition, like I don't think a lot of people are still playing first edition. Or do you guys still see people on that app if it's still even around?
I don't know if I think it's discontinued. Like I can still open it up and look at my old records, but I don't think anyone's actually playing. I don't know if it's supported anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it's really supported anymore. They did have a couple cool things from that app though that I really hope they implement at some point. Like in that app, you could check out like what factions were winning the most. You could see all the win percentages for all the different factions. You could just pull up the stats based off factions, and it would tell you like, oh, Phoenix Elves have a 55% win rate. Tundra Orcs have a 57. and that was really cool to see. I love stats, but I loved looking at those stats just to see like, like I'm doing better than like this deck is supposed to be, or I'm terrible with this deck, and they're supposed to be one of the top decks, and I just can't get them to work.
Yeah, that's actually an awesome feature. I mean, I'm pretty sure they still have that available, that data. They just don't expose it anymore to the users, and they just use it to start considering which factions to adjust. And so, because, well, I mean, they show us that on the tournaments, but they probably have them in like the global play.
Yeah, we'll have Joe, or we had Joe on the podcast a little bit ago, and he'll go into that. And I think he said that when that podcast drops, he'll release the data from season 2.
Oh yeah. Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, for them to release it on a season basis. I'm really looking forward to for them to implement like a random faction selector that you can just do like random, and then it shows like when you're playing who picked the random deck, because that way organize some events with random factions, right? Like everyone is just playing random factions, so you just go in there and whatever you get, like no time to plan to like practice for anything, you just get that. That would be pretty fun.
I think that'd be a good time. Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool features that Joe can add if Joe can find time with all the work that he's doing.
Yeah, because he works on other games and stuff too.
Yeah, he does a lot. But Vexer, you are probably the best player currently in the community with the Swamp Orcs. You've had some very strong showings with them. What do you think are like some good tips for players who are just starting to play the Swamp Orcs?
Yeah, let's talk about them, and let's start from the basics, right? Assuming like some of the people listening to this have never played them, then we'll get to some advanced tips for like the players who are pretty familiar with them. So first, for the Swamp Orcs, you have to consider some facts about them, like Moglok, the summoner. It's probably like the hardest hitting summoner in the whole game, right? Like he can consistently be hitting like 5-6 melee under bad conditions. Like if you're doing badly, or you'll be able to hit that. Under good conditions where you're being able to build your board, you can be hitting like 12 to 20 dice in a turn with her. So no other summoner really is close to that. Then the other one is that the champions are usually with most factions you can play like one champion per game, maybe two. With the Swamp Orcs, you're going to be playing like somewhere from 2 to 4 champions is like a normal average of champions you'll be seeing in a game. So that tells us like what's the core of the faction, like what's the theme of the deck is really all about exploiting this potential of Moglok and the champions. All the other cards and all the other units really are just there to enable her to be able to do those crazy attacks that I mentioned that you can do with her. Let's start covering some of these cards. I guess that's what you want to do, right? Like get her in the game, exchanging, like trading. That's also one of the things. Like she's probably the most involved summoner that you'll have in the game. Some other factions don't really rely that much on the summoner, can just keep it on the back or maybe just use some of its abilities. But with Moglok, like she needs to be part of the action, right? Like if you just have it on the back and you're just using the other unit, you'll probably don't be able to win the long battle with them. So the main ability that she has is that she's able to throw, like her base attack is 3. She's able to boost that into any number. There's no limit as long as you have boost counters on the units around her, 3 spaces away to increase those attacks. The other thing is that she's able to attack up to 2 clear straight spaces away, which is like huge. The deck wouldn't really work without that. And all the other units that you'll see, all the other common units, are really just there to support that strategy of her throwing massive attacks. The 2 main pieces of the deck, like the 2 key units, let's just say like the key units are the Bog Shaman, which is let's say the bolt, the storage bolt of the units, like the one that will be the easiest to accumulate boosts on, and the Vine-Mancer, because that one allows you to do some crazy positioning in the turns. The Vine-Mancer is the one that for 1 boost, you'll be able to be dragging a common unit of the opponent or any unit on your deck. So meaning like you can even attack with Mog and then hide her. So that allows you to have a lot of flexibility in the positioning and then in protecting Mog. And well, the bog shaman I didn't mention. Like whenever someone moves close to her or to the shaman, like he'll be getting a boost. So and you have a limit of up to 3 before that stops, but you'll be always consuming those. So then you'll always want to be try to maxing them at 3. Those are the 2 key units that the deck has. The other 2 are, let's say, a little bit more situational. At least the mod Roger, that's like a 3 attack, only 1 health. You get a free movement with that one. So that's very important because the moves are the most limited resource that that deck will have, as they are what gives you the boosts in most situations. And the mod Roger has its dual use unit. Most of the time, really, you want to use it just to protect Moglog. If he's adjacent to Moglog, whenever the summoner gets attacked, then that attack won't do any damage. You will just destroy the mod Roger. The opponent won't be getting any magic in that case. You just lose that unit, but you save her like that, whatever damage, right? So that means that it's a good card if you were against an opponent who's going to be like throwing 3 melee or 3 range attacks at the summoner, but it's unusable if you're going against factions which can just do like 1 damage, not even as part of an attack, like the archer from the Phoenix Elves, right? The other use, sometimes you'll just want the 3 melee, right? Because all the other common units of the deck don't really hit hard at all. The Vinemancer that we mentioned before, it's 2 melee. The Bog Shaman is 2 range, which is like as weak as it can get on attack. So the Mod Roger at 3 melee is something that sometimes you don't care that it's going to be an easy kill for the opponent because it only has 1 life. You just want it out to get those that like hard attack to against the summoner or against like a key unit you want to kill, and then you're okay like knowing like yeah it's going to get killed easily, picked off easily. And then the last common unit is the Bog Witch. And that one, it's I mean, it's still an important unit because just having the threat of a witch around, it's enough for the opponent to have to play the game in a completely different way. The thing with this one is, well, it's only 2 range and 2 life, and usually you don't need that many of them, right? Like you don't need you're not going to be playing the 4 of them, as all you need is 1 or 2 in the battlefield at any given time. So if you end up having other ones in your hand, many times you end up discarding 1 or 2 of them. But you still want to have 1 around, but it's not like the Bog Shaman or the Vinemancer that you really never discard. Like you can have as many as you want, as you can fit in the battlefield, because some of them will inevitably be killed. So all those 4 units, as you saw, like they're really by themselves, they're not that amazing, but once they're working together to enable Moglog, they become really powerful.
With those Finemancers and with the Bog Shamans, do you find that you play like every single one? Do you ever discard them for magic?
I rarely discard them for magic because they're so important for the deck to really work as you want it to be, like in its optimal maximum potential. And it's very rare that I find myself in a situation like you might. Well, the Vine Masters, like I don't think you would ever really discard those because sometimes you also need like for that second or third attack on a turn, like someone who can have a higher chance of hitting for 2. So the Vine Master many times will be on the front lines, also exchanging and hitting, and they're gonna get killed, right? So you'll need to have more Vine Masters coming in. The Bog Shaman, you really only discard him if you end up getting a hand in which in your first 10 cards you see 4 of them or something like that. Or you need the magic for some other specific play that you're trying to do with, especially with champions. But other than that, I rarely discard them. And one of the reasons is that this deck doesn't really need to discard a lot. There are Many matchups in which the Drudger is not going to be like a good unit to play. It's not going to be worthwhile. So if that is the case, you're going to be discarding most of them. Then mostly you'll discard like at least one witch in the average matchup. So there's really no reason to be discarding the Bog Shamans or the Vine Masters, especially because the Bog Shaman, you can just play it behind the gate somewhere around like a centric spot in the board, and it's going to be useful eventually.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably something you do in general more with the Swamp Orcs and other factions, right? Is just summon some commons to start generating boosts, even if you don't plan on moving or attacking with them. I mean, probably moving, but not attacking, right?
Yes, and in this case specifically because you want your hand to have like a healthy flow of cards. Because you need to get to some specific cards, which we'll start talking about them, right? Like some of the events. So many times, even if you don't have a specific use for a Bog Shaman, you just want it off your hand because you don't want to discard it, but you don't want him to be clogging up your hand. So with this deck, I try to really be finishing like any turn with at most one or two cards in my hand, either because if there were units that I want, I'm just going to play them on the board even if they're not going to be doing anything that turn, and or I'm going to discard them at the end. And this is where things start getting a little bit challenging. Like you want to summon them but not in a position in which they're just going to come down to get killed. So you start having to use some of the like side positions on the board or the back positions on the board, and things are going to get clogged up. And that's one of the main like the difficulties of piloting this deck. Like when you hear about it, like it seems like a simple deck. Like you see, well, it's a straightforward strategy. It's not a complex deck. Most of the complexity really is around the positioning of all of those units, because at some points you can end up with like most of the half of your board completely clogged up between units and gates. So just moving around, like having space to move the units, it's challenging because there's nowhere like there's no space. Some of them like you feel like they got trapped and now you cannot use them for anything, like that witch on the back that will never reach Mog because there's no space to move. It's very common to end up in that situation. So that's kind of like the hardest part of the deck. Know how to position units and how to leave at least a single lane on each side for potential moves of units from the back to the front, and how to have them in a safe spot in which they're not just picked off very easily. One of the things that people realize really fast with this deck is that, well, it really relies completely on all of those supporting units for Mug. Like, why don't we just kill all of those units? Like, let's ignore the summoner, just go after those units. And you'll see in some games people completely ignoring Mog, even if they have like a chance to start chipping away, because they just want to like destroy all the common units. And it's a valid strategy. It really hurts you more than when they hit Mog many times. But that's why you have to be careful, like how you position them, and if they're following that strategy, sometimes just putting them on the back to make sure that they're not even able to get to them. Unless they get really close, and then when they get really close, you start like using Mog or the champions to try to wipe out anything that gets close to your side. All right, so let's talk about the events, right? These events it's the same logic about supporting the rest of the deck. So we have the bind gates, which is just like three health gates that when you summon units out of them, they're gonna come out with a boost. And this card it's like huge for the deck. Like it's extremely important for the deck because once you have a Vine Gate around, it's really hard to find yourself in that situation in which you don't have enough boosts. When you don't have one around, if they start killing a few of your units, many times you just don't have enough boosts to do all the things that you would like to be able to do. So the bind gates, you want to be careful not to have them in a position in which they can just go after it and destroy it. I mean, at 3 health, many times a single attack can blow them up. So first gate I usually get, I put it all the way to the back, right on the first row, on the left side where you have a little bit more space because the starting gate is on the leaning to the right side. It's a valid strategy to have it like behind another gate that is on the third on the third row, or have some of the common units with 3 life around there, like on the front of it, so that they cannot really go after it. Because if you don't have the second one around, it's likely that you'll at some point just have one for a while. If they destroy that, it really slows your game. So when I see people putting that on the second or third row, I always try to just go and take a shot at it with a 3/3 to see if I can get rid of that gate, because it really hurts and slows down the orcs when that happens. So the other key unit, the other key event is the epic event, which is emerge. So this one allows you to get a discount on your champions, up to 3 magic discount based on how many boosts you have around across the whole board. And it allows you to go and search for a summoner. So this is the card. That's the reason why I mentioned you can play from 2 to 4 champions, because you're going to be able to get them again, like from the graveyard, from the discard pile, and reuse them over and over. Yeah, so the key thing with this card, the ideal way to play it is that you can retrieve it from your draw pile or from your discard pile. You'll want to try to be pulling a unit from the discard pile whenever you can, because that way you're getting an extra magic out of the card. That means that that card in the discard pile, you already discarded it to get 1 magic, and then you're getting it back with the event. Or you already played it and used it, and you lost it, and then you get it back. Compared, if you get it from the draw pile, you're not really getting any card advantage, any magic advantage at all, right? Like that was a card that you would draw eventually. Now you're just getting it. Sometimes like that's okay when you need a specific champion for that specific situation. But the ideal use is when you get your first champion and you know that you're not going to be able to play it yet, you discard it, and then you just hope to get it with a merge whenever you want to play it, like a turn or 2 after. And then we have 2 other events which are also, let's just say, team players. Like they're not key events in the same way, because, well, one thing with the merge is I never really discard the merge. It would have to be a very specific situation. I've heard some people like discard the first one if they get it too soon, but I think it's too powerful to be discarded. Like even if I get the 2 of them soon in the game, I just try to play one, even if it's in a suboptimal way, in which I don't get like the full discount or something like that. Like it's still better than discarding it. But the other 2 events are a bit more situational. One of them is SAO, which allows you to either boost all of your common units that already have a boost, or boost all of the common units that don't have a boost. So this event, like it's really good in most situations, but for this event to be good, you need to have a critical mass of units already on the board, right? So for it to really be impactful, you need at least 3 or more units. Really prefer to have at least 4 or more. Or if you have 3, well, at least you want to have a purpose for those boosts that you're going to be getting, because if that is not the case, like some of those units can simply die the next turn, right? If they're on the front line. So if you're not in one of those situations, like many times I discard the first SAO until I'm at a spot in which I have enough units to be getting like multiple counters. Like when you get 4, 5, 6 counters, you'll really feel like, oh, this was like it allows you to do some like crazy plays or crazy attacks with them, or do some plays, more importantly, that they can't anticipate in the same way, right? Like when the opponent sees that you have a bug witch, it needs to have 2 counters for the witch to allow you to do a double attack with a summoner. I actually forgot to mention the ability of the bug witch. It's that you can pay 2 counters to do a second attack with a champion or Muglock. So it gets 1 boost every time you move her. So the first turn that it comes out, people are not concerned about it because they know, like, well, it will just get 1 boost on that move. They won't be able to do a double attack. But with SAO, it allows you to add that second boost on that same turn and then do a double attack with a summoner that it was not so easily anticipated by the opponent. And SAO really just gives you like a a lot of more boosts that this deck, like you want as many as you can get, you will always have a use for them because there's no limit on the attacks for Moglog. So as many as you can get, you'll just be throwing crazy attacks with her.
Muglug obviously is the center of this deck, and it's a very like summoner cannon type of deck. But there's a couple other ways in which decks have been like a summoner cannon type of deck. Like we have the Wayfarers, and we have Eternal Council, and we have Obsidian Dwarves, which all are summoner focused, and they all increase the summoner's attack to pretty high levels. How does this deck like differ from those other decks?
So the main one of them, multiple reasons. One of them is that with Moglug, there's no limit on the upper limit on the attack compared to like Eldia or Celeste, like which have like okay, you know that at most they'll be able to hit you for 7. Eldia is going to be up to 8 plus any like psychic assault damages that they can do. So with Eldia, it's like a temporary state that is based on events. In with Celeste, it's a state based on position. In here, it's really a potential state based on the rest of the supporting units, which I usually just call the swamp. Like all of those units that you're going to build on your side and gates, they're going to be supporting Mog, and building that infrastructure of support for her is the one that allows you to be throwing those crazy attacks with her.
I think another thing that makes this deck so different from, for example, like Eternal Council with Edia, like very strong summoner cannon, and also has abilities like Mug to get pulled into safety with the advisors. But the Swamp Orcs seem more consistent in that because they're not reliant on attacks, for example, like Eternal Council has. They have to have those advisors be making those attacks to be able to move Edia back to safety, whereas with Vinemancers, you can just do the pulls without having to like waste attacks. You just need to have those boosts and have the positioning right and still get mugged to safety like every turn.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it's easier to pull off with the Swamp Orcs, and I mean, there's still situations in which if they start just killing your units real fast, if they're really aggressive, it's hard to build up to that state. But it's, I think, much more achievable more often than not when you know how to like play or protect certain cards because you know like where you're trying to get, right? You're trying to get to that board state in which you have like gate presence on each side, you have a vine gate in a safe spot, and then you have around like 8 units on your side of the board, like 8 common units or 6 common units, all of them supporting those crazy attacks, which really limit what the opponent can do when you can throw so many dice and you can move units out of the way. Many times they cannot even get the summer close because there's so many ways to remove blockers with the like the Vinemancers is so powerful with the 3 range to pull stuff that the usual strategy of just protecting the summoner with a single unit doesn't really get you into a safe spot when you're playing against them. So the final event then is Regenerate, and this is also an important event, but it's situational, right? Meaning that one allows you to pick off 3 boosts from units 3 spaces away from either Moglog or the champion, just to heal 3 life, which is it's actually huge, right? If you think about this, with the availability of the regenerates, even if you don't get them at full capacity of the 3 life recovery, let's just say you're around 4 to 6, Moglog would be the summoner with the highest health that you have available to play around, right? Like you would have up to 19 life. So that's why many people don't even bother hitting Moglog, because with the regenerates, it has so much life that sometimes it's just easier to remove the units that really make her a threat than trying to chip away at so much life that you know it's going to be coming back. But the challenges with Regenerate is the fact that, well, if they are not hitting you, how long can you keep a card just clogging your hand? right? Like that's really hurts you if you have like 5 turns that regenerate, and then the second one comes by and you really cannot heal anything. So it's not uncommon to have to discard or regenerate if you get it like in your opening hand, and you know that okay, it's probably like it's gonna take a while for me to be able to use this, so I would just rather like discard the first one. Many times, like you would rarely discard both of them, as like mid game and the end of the game, like they will always have hit Moglog at least a bit. So you want to get those 3 life back. It makes a difference. But yeah, like not in every situation, regenerate is going to be like a game changer, like some of the other events, like Emerge. All right, and finally, we have the champions. So with these ones, like they have really weird names. I've always actually never remember the names. I always refer to them as the 4, 5, and 6 magic dudes. And yeah, the best one is the 5 magic dude. That one is hard. So I have them around in front of me to remember the names. So let's see what they do. So Splack at 4 magic. So that one is the one in which you get the free movement that doesn't count against your 3 movement limit. And it has a free attack, meaning like it allows you to do a 4th attack. So this guy is just amazing for this deck. You'll always want to play this guy at least once. Many times you can play it twice. And it's only at 4 magic. So this is a guy that you might play even if you don't have the Emerge discount, because for those abilities, it's a 5 health, 3 melee. It's definitely worth it. And when you get it with the discount, like for 1 magic, it feels like a steal. Like it feels like, oh, this is like you feel bad for being able to do so much for just 1 magic. So that's a key guy. Then the other one, which is the one that the deck relies on the most, and that's probably maybe the strongest, close to Splack, it's Blove at 5 magic. So it has rush. So when it comes out of a gate, you can force it 1 space in any direction. So that means that on the first turn, like you're going to be able to move up to 3 spaces. And then it has aggressive attack. So it gets 2 extra attack on the turn that it comes in. So it's going to come in fast, like extras range, and then 5 attack when it comes out. So this is the one that you'll probably be using the most. He's like being able to hit for 5 in positions that they wouldn't usually anticipate that you will be able to hit them. Just the threat of this card makes them have to play like really in different ways, like how close they get the summoner. Many times it's just determined by, well, can a Blove hit me in this position or not? That tends to be the rule with that one, as he can hit really hard, and it can also attack twice if you pair it up with a witch. So that means like you summon it out of a buying gate and then force it 1 space and then summon a witch behind him, and that way you can have like 10 dice just by doing that play, in which then you move it, you move the witch, and you're hitting for 10. And finally, we have the 6th one, Glurp. So this is the more kind of like a niche situation champion that you will rarely play, to tell you the truth. Like it's most games you won't really even play it, but it's some matchups he's decent. He's a 7 life, 3 attack, and his ability allows him to destroy a unit, and then you're gonna replace whatever you destroyed with a buying gate. So that buying gate can be on your drop pile or on your discard pile. But the thing here is that this guy is more of a defensive unit, because think about this: you destroy a unit in front of him, and then you're putting a gate in that position, so you cannot really keep moving forward, right? You're just creating distance with between your opponent side and yourself, and then now they have to destroy that gate to get to you. So that's why in many situations, like it's not that valuable getting a gate like on the opponent's side or somewhere in which they can destroy it easily. And but he's great against decks like Fungal Dwarves, for example, in which you destroy the carrier, replace it by a gate, and then they cannot keep using those beasts to hit back your champion until they destroy that gate to be able to move forward to it. So there are some specific scenarios where you might be able to play him, but most of the times you'll find yourselves in a situation in which you would rather just get another bluff and then just go hit hard for 5 again, and keep that type of like explosive aggression than get Glorp out, especially because he's the most expensive, right? So even with a discount, he's going to be costing you 3. So compared to the value you get out of the other 2 guys at a more cheaper cost, you'll always end up, most of the times you'll end up going with the other guys.
This deck doesn't struggle against fungal dwarves in the slightest, but something that I know a lot of people always try and practice that is different with this deck is people always try and get all 3 of their attacks in. And I feel like it's not always necessary with Swamp Orcs because you can hit so hard with those big attacks. Like if you're attacking with Mug and say Blub, and then you pull them back just to pull them to safety and don't expose anybody else with those attacks, then I feel like sometimes that's even stronger than getting a 3rd attack in with a common that's not going to do a whole lot of damage. Like I struggle in a lot of matchups against Swamp Orcs when they'll just step Mug up, take a shot, kill, like, for example, a big health unit like a Beast or like a Warrior in Crimson Order, and then step back into safety with those Vinemancers, so you don't really have any way to retaliate, or you have like one avenue to attack Mug.
Yes, exactly. And that's a huge point you cover there. Like in this deck, you have to resist the urge to try to like get 3 attacks in because it's not necessary. All you really want is to have Mog be active every turn. Like you just want that big attack. And then for the other ones, it's really not necessary if it's going to leave you in a position in which they're going to be able to kill those like witches or shamans. Like those 2 ranged attacks, most of the time they're insignificant. So if the value you can get is 1 or 2 attack, but then they're going to kill the shaman, it's not worth it in most situations. It's preferred, as you were saying, just to be in a position that you're able to attack with Mog and then pull her to safety or like expose, like leave her with only a single flank exposed. And you want to be able to attack something big. That is the key of this deck. Like with Mog, they're going to be big attacks. So you want to be sure to be hitting something valuable, right? So getting those 2 magic units, 3 magic units. It's really not that valuable if you're attacking like a 0 cost unit or 2 health unit with Mog. You don't want to use her for those type of things. So at the same time, on the other side, when you're playing against them, you don't want to give them those valuable targets. You just want to give him like worthless 0 cost units. Well, worthless from the perspective of, yeah, like use your super cannon against that. I'm not going to allow you to kill my 2 magic units with them, right? So that's kind of like that, those type of, now that we covered all the like basic cards and functions and roles, some of those advanced considerations in which it's not important to do the 3 attacks, just try to get the most value you can get from Mog and then get her in a relatively safe position. The other thing with Mog that I see sometimes people playing like, yeah, she has a lot of life, but you cannot really be too aggressive. Like this is not really an aggressive deck. Even though like it's a huge summer, hits hard, like big champions, you can't be too aggressive because you need time to build all of that supporting structure of the swamp, right? All of those units that will allow you to do that. Before you're in that position, if you send Mog like forward too much or leave too many flanks open at the end of an attack, like they can still hit her hard. Like if they go with 3 attacks at her and hit her for 8 or something like that, you start getting into the range of like a 1-turn kill if they manage to get like another 2 or 3 attacks on her. So you have to gradually advance with her. Like you can be aggressive in the middle of the game, maybe if you've been building that support structure. You'll want to be moving Mog into kind of like the center of the board in a position in which you can move left or right and still be within the 3 space range of like a part over most of your units. And that's where you want to be, right? At that point, you're going to be gradually advancing, like 1 row at a time. When you have the gates, you'll have a lot of gates. Like you'll feel like you have more of the gates than usual because of the bind gate. So because you don't really need to discard that much, the way I use the gates is that support to start moving forward. After the first one, like the first ones usually is just to cover like the left side and then the back bind gate, and maybe you can do a right side gate. But any additional gate, then when you start moving forward, you can just use it to cover the flanks, right? Because it's like, okay, I can move forward and hit this big unit, but then I leave 3 flanks open. Like you don't want those type of situations. But if you're able to at least cover one flank with a gate, the other with a unit, it's much safer, right? Like you don't care if there's a single flank open, because it's gonna be inevitable many times, like to keep her completely protected if you're attacking with her. But if it's a single flank, they won't really be able to hit you hard, and it's going to be within the range of what you want to be hit to start regenerating when you're doing those exchanges of killing something, they hit you back, then you destroy it, you regenerate. As long as you're not getting like 2-3 attacks on her, like you're going to be good. Like you're going to be gaining on that card advantage game.
So what decks do you think that, if someone's just starting out for Swamp Orcs, are easier to play against?
So in general, like they are good against anything that has like relies on big units. As you were saying, like fungal dwarves relies a lot on those like 3 magic beasts, like things like polar dwarves. They also have like very, like most of them are at expensive units, 2 or 3, or even the one magic unit that has 4 life. Has 4 life, right? So usually it takes like 2 attacks to knock those down. Like with Mog, it's a single attack. It's still like a worthwhile attack. All of those decks that have those type of bulky units are tend to be like decent matchups. Another one is Eternal Council, right? Like most of the units they have, there are 2 magic units. Like they're bulky units. They have a decent amount of life, so they're good targets. The I guess harder decks, it's really the ranged decks that can just really stay back and start shooting from afar. I think the breakers is probably one of the toughest matchups, or decks that have a lot of cheap creatures. The cave goblins, I've only played that matchup a few times. I mean, it's not an impossible matchup, but those matchups, because the cave goblins have such little health that even the commons of Swamp Orcs are able to like do a 1-for-1 type of exchanges most times. But yeah, it's really just like the decks that are able to fight you at a range and have like a strong ranged game are hard to go against, because if you have to overextend Mog to even get them, well, that's a risk. And then your units, if they're able to pick them apart from afar without you even being able to get an exchange every now and then, it's hard to come on top after a while in those situations.
What common mistakes do you think people make when they're first playing Swamp Orcs?
So the main ones are probably what we mentioned about like trying to get the 3 attacks and trying to use the supporting units as in the usual way, in which you're just summoning units and going to the middle of the board and just trading hits with the other units. Because you're going to be like, they're going to be hitting harder than you, right? With just 2 range and 2 melee on most of them, or like even the Drudger, which gets killed immediately. Like the best you can hope with him is that he kills something on that 3 attack, because then it's going to be like an automatic kill for the opponent almost. So if you try to fight it that way, you'll find yourself that you're always running short of units for Mog to be a threat. And then you'll just feel like, yeah, this is a weak deck. Like I'm always like struggling to even use my events like Regenerate or Emerge. I don't have enough counters. I cannot really hit hard with Mog. So that is the main ones. The other one I think is just playing it as if it was an aggressive deck, in which you just like send Mog forward almost into the opponent side of the table, and then you're too far away from being able to properly get counters from most of your units, or just have too many flanks open, and suddenly once they hit you hard in a turn, you find yourself in a situation in which you have to hide Mog. And in most of the games that I've seen, if you're in a situation in which you're hiding Mog, you're probably going to lose, right? Because the deck, it's hard to sustain the effectivity of the deck if Mog is not a part of it, right? If Mog is not exchanging value, then you're probably going to lose. So that's another one. The other one that it's a smaller thing, but sometimes I even get hit by that, is that when you send Mog forward, like in that midpoint in the game that you feel confident to start advancing, using a gate to cover a front position, like that's a common tactic, right? Like you send the summoner forward and then you put a gate on in front of the summoner, covering the front summoning spot of an opponent's gate. But I find that many times that what that causes is that now they can hide from Mog behind your gate. That they can use your own front gates to hide from Mog. And it puts you in a position like, well, I have to destroy now my own gates to keep the threat forward of Moglog, or it buys them a lot of time to start like moving around or doing other things. So many times I find that it's counterproductive to use the forward gate with Mog, because that removes the threat of Moglog itself, like at that point, like when they can just hide behind your own cards.
Yeah, I think carrying on with the gates, another thing that I had to learn after playing Swamp Orcs for a while was you don't want your vine gates out too far right, but your other gates, your 5 health gates, are instrumental, I think, in sometimes protecting some of your swamp to like cover for those units, so you can have like bog shamans behind them just building up boosts, but they're still close enough to like where you have Mug that you can get the use out of those boosts.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like after the first gate that just goes on the left, the other 5 gates, one of the main uses that you can have for them is on the 4th row, just planting them around there and using them as cover for the rest of your common units. Right. And yeah, that's like some of the best value you can get out of it, because that way you can get the other units to safety. Like many times, the 3 life units, meaning the Vine Mancer and the Bog Shaman, they'll come out in a position in which, okay, they can attack, they're going to get hit at least once. And if they survive, that's the bits. There's a big difference between 3 and 2 life. Like 3, they'll be able to survive many times that hit at 1 life. Then you want to be able to just hide it behind either a 5 gate or another like new 3 health unit to still be able to use it for boosts and things like that, but and not give the opponent the magic. Like that's one of the best positions you can be in which you don't give them the magic, but you still get the value of having that unit around, especially with a shaman. Like if that shaman is just behind the unit at 1 life, you don't really need to move it again. You don't need to attack with him again. He's just going to be giving you a lot of value with those extra counters that you will definitely need. I think that covers like the main mistakes I see people do. Like the other one is use the champions as much as you can. Don't worry about them. Like usually with champions in other factions, you have to play them as kind of like with the same mentality as a summoner of keeping them super protected, right? You don't want to play a 5/6 magic champion that comes out, hits once, then gets surrounded, and they kill him in 1 turn, right? Like you cannot just do it that way. Many times you play them and you have to put them in a position in which they can only be attacked from 1 flank. With the Swamp Orcs, you don't have to be so protective of the champions. Like it's okay to get a blob and just like rush him forward, pass like some units just to hit the other summoner for 5. And then you don't care if they just do their 3 attacks to kill him, because he's going to come back, right? And many times you only pay 2 magic for that. So it's like 2 magic to hit for 5 at something worthwhile, and then have the opponent have to spend the whole turn to try to kill that unit. It's a good trade. So you don't have to be so protective of them.
Because then they're not hitting your summoner or cutting down your swamp and stuff like that, right?
Exactly. Like as long as they're spending their time on that one and leaving your common units alone, that's actually what you want, right? That's where you want to be, because you don't really pay like 5 magic or anything like that. Like 2 magic it's a bargain. And then he's gonna come back, right? He's gonna come back angrier in the future to hit for 5 again. And you can just keep doing that as long as you have a merge or the threat of a merge. Then they'll have to be playing around the blob.
I think I've lost games against Swamp Orcs by killing Blub when leaving him alive at 3 strength would have been better than letting him come back with 5.
Exactly, yeah.
So not only are you a Swamp Orcs expert, Vexer, you're also very good with tons of other factions, which is just illustrated by the strength of your record in the league and the back-to-back championships you just won. Is there anything you could give anybody like up and coming in the league or up and coming in competitive play, like tips or things that you had to learn to help them grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I do try to like I play all factions. I never really just play one for too long. I was switching them over. I think all of them are pretty awesome, especially with the fixes. Like before, there were some factions that they were not even worth playing because they were just completely broken, like Vanguard. But with those light changes that they made, like I think all factions are playable. All of them have a shot now. So the key is to understand what the faction is trying to do. Like all of them have a theme, all of them have like a concept. So really understand like what's that concept, like what it revolves around, to plan your strategy and your turns around that. So that means like don't play all factions the same way in like that inertia of just like summoning units, just sending them to the middle just to trade, and just like that slugfest, and then another one, and just wave after wave, right? Like sometimes, like when you're really not sure what to do, like that's what the inertia of just trying to get the maximum value for your movements and your 3 attacks, as many attacks as possible. So try to just look past that and think about like what's the goal of the faction. Where does the faction want to be? Some factions play better all the way in the back. Some ones want to be aggressive. Some of them like the midfield and the exchange there. Because that makes a big difference, right? When you're planning your turns around that, and also think about like the opponent faction, like what is that faction trying to do? Like for example, Shadow Elves, like Shadow Elves wants them to come at them, right? Because they want to have all the action within that 3 range of Selundar and be able to just attack and retreat around that range. So they want you to come at them. So if that's the case, like you can think, do I have a faction that is able to just try to stay as far away or can move easily from left to right to try to make them hard for the other deck to keep the units close to Selendar or whatever they want to achieve? So that would be one of the main things that I would recommend people. The other one really is it's just about many times like practice, repetition, knowing the decks, right? Like thinking about like what are the potential things that my opponent could do, and for that you just need to know the cards. So don't feel like you have to memorize them. Like you can always open another window, go to the deck builder section, and just select the deck, and then you'll be able to see all the cards, right? And just know what are the potential things. Like I when I had been playing for many months, I was still doing that just to remember exactly what all the potential tricks were. And that makes it easier to think about what the opponent could do, right? Which makes all the difference in the world. Like when you don't really know what they could do, then there are some surprises like, oh, he'll like with breakers, oh, he can just control all my units 2 spaces away. I shouldn't have rush him. And suddenly all your units are surrounding you. And then you just lose a game that you thought you were winning.
Also, with your competitive play, you are the most recent league champion, but you have announced that you're deciding to step away. Do you still think you'll compete in other competitive aspects of the game? Like, are you going to still play ranked or the occasional Plaid Hat tournament?
Probably not on the short term on the competitive play right now. Well, I'm still just finishing the tournaments that I had started, and I'll be doing I might just be doing the PhD tournaments from now on, maybe, because those don't happen very often. It's just like every 3 months. I'll still be like the once there's new factions, I'll be doing the public queue. Because right now I even haven't really been starting those. Based on the main reason is that the asynchronous nature of the game is really just completely distracting through the day. Like I found myself like checking my mobile or the game if I had turns like 20 times per day or more. And like whatever you're doing, you lose focus. Or if I'm like doing some other activity, oh, I have a turn, I start playing that. It's just completely it's like a tunnel, right? Like that you go into when you're thinking a turn or thinking something to do. And the fact that you're not able to just sit down, play a game, and just finish it, you end up in that situation, right? Like you're dragging sometimes games for like a whole week. Yeah, that's why one of the main reasons why I decided to do that. It's too bad that the public queue doesn't have like the 45-minute timer as an option. I mean, I understand the logic that they've mentioned that they don't want to split the player base, but I wonder how counterproductive that ends up being at the end with like how many players end up just really not playing as much as they would because not having like that option that they would like to use or just not playing at all, just stepping away from the game because they cannot play live. So hopefully in the future they implement that option, and that way I would probably come back and start like playing again almost every day in the public queue. Right now, I think I would just do whenever new factions come out. Like it's usually like pretty awesome time just to try them out. You want to like get to know them. So at that point, I'll have to do the public queue. Right now, I'll probably just be doing more casual play with people in the Discord. There's a channel for matchmaking, so that's a great place many times to find games.
You are also the defending champion for the Tournament of Champions. So maybe when that comes back around, you'll be ready for some competitive play and can play one of the many factions that you are an expert with, because you won it with the Shadow Elves, not even the Swamp Orcs. They weren't even in the last Tournament of Champions.
It'd be, I mean, right now, I mean, it depends when it will happen, not sure. But right now, I'm just going to try to step away from all that. But on the short term, but yeah, maybe on the medium term, long term, yeah, I'll do the occasional tournament. I really like the Tournament of Champions format, like everyone representing one faction. It's a pretty cool concept for sure.
Yeah, even I was in that. I didn't have the best showing, but I got voted in.
I mean, you represented the Tundra Orcs pretty well.
Yeah, I got a couple wins.
Tundra Orcs are probably one of the harder factions to represent.
Yeah, a lot of people put them lower in the tier list when they make a tier list. I think now, though, tier list, it's just like a tier soup is what I think of it after the first couple of decks, you know? We could have debates for a while about like which one's above the others, you know, because like you said, after they changed the Vanguards and Phoenix Elves, I think there's really nothing that's just terrible anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything that is completely unplayable at this point.
But where do you think the Swamp Orcs fall in like a tier list? Do you think they're one of the top decks? Do you think they're more middle of the pack? What do you think?
I would say they are close to the top. I mean, I'm not sure if I would want to like grade them the way they do all those tier lists. I mean, they haven't really proved themselves to be like the highest tier with the fungal dwarves or the cloaks or those because, well, there haven't really been enough tournaments probably for them to show that. I don't think they're at that level of power of some of those in which I think they're probably like too strong, like some factions right now which are too strong, which they're actually considering adjusting those probably based on those stats that they have. But I would say they're close to those like stronger than average, maybe A tier if we want to use like the terms that are usually used between S and A. I feel like they have like some like horrible matches or unwinnable matches. I think probably the worst one that I've found is against Breakers. But all the other ones that I've played, I played against most of the factions, and I feel they have like good matchups against most of them. So yeah, but I'll be bringing them to the next PhD tournament, and yeah, let's see how it goes with them.
Sounds good. Well, we appreciate having you on, Vexer. You've given us tons of insight into Swamp Orcs and just general play.
Absolutely, guys. It was great chatting with you.
Is there any place that you want people to find you on like social media or just in the Discord or?
So I don't really have any social media presence, so it would be Discord the place to be. That's the one that I usually check often, and I'm usually just checking some conversations. So yeah, feel free to ping me there if you ever want to play some synchronous game.
Sounds good. Well, we appreciate everybody listening. This has been Discard for Magic. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.